Hey team, I'm Alex. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to make this Fountain of Hearts intro in honor of Valentine's Day. We're going to learn some really useful stuff, such as how to control a zillion objects and make them into a fountain, which of course you can use for any of your objects. So, let's get started. We're first going to start by creating our 3D text. We'll come up to Object and select Create 3D Text. Next, we'll type in our text. I'll type in Happy Valentine's Day. Then select all of our objects by clicking and dragging over our objects and decreasing the leading. I'll click OK, and our objects will be extruded and beveled in our scene. Perfect. Now that we have that, let's put some textures on our objects. I will scroll down, find our pink stripe texture, drag it directly onto our object, and let go. Next, I want to put this metallic-y type of material onto the outside of the object. I can do that by dragging it onto the second dock, and then dragging the second dock onto the outside material split. Done. That easy. Okay. Now that we have our materials on those objects, let's animate them. We come over to Animation Workspace. We can then come up to the timeline, double-click at the timeline to create a new pose, and then click on the first pose and distribute them into a depth line. And then take the depth line and make it go into 0. That just puts them into one area. It's a little trick just to get them into one area. We're going to move that off the screen by going in the positive Y direction, and then select our transition and give it some arch, give it some, decrease the arch center a little bit, overshoot the end, and give it some cascade. Great. Lastly, we'll also decrease the ease at the end so it nicely floats into place. And we will click play, and we see our objects now cascade into place, overshoot the end where they want to be, and float into place. One more thing with these objects, though, is we're going to come over to our path actions and click free offset with tumble. I will increase the maximum distance so it gives a little wiggle room, and increase the maximum rotation to 180. Now when I click play, they wiggle a little more and it gives it a little better feel. However, your art director right now just said, hey, you know what, I like your animation, but I want the words to be a little tilted at the end. And you go, what? I'm keyframing, I can't do that. Oh wait, you can. All you have to do, select your last pose, come down to rotate around common center, and change the Z rotation. Look at that. Let me go into the front view so we can see this. And we see our object now falls down and looks perfect into place with a little wiggle. Awesome. Now that we have our text done, let's import our Illustrator file, which is our heart. Just a simple drawing of a heart, and we will change the bevel and put some textures on it. So we'll come up to Object, Import Illustrator File, select our heartoutline.ai, and click Import. Great. You can see we have a little object in here. We'll come over to our modeling workspace, and if we turn off the letters for now, we can zoom in and we see we have our heart. All the heart is a object, is a vector object. We can mess around with this object and it will update in our 3D preview window. I'll hit undo. Next, what we need to do is give it a different bevel. It has a regular bevel, but I want a different bevel. Come up to pipes and half pipes and select medium. Half pipe medium. So now we see we have our object that has a nice little bevel. I'll decrease the depth, and there you go. Okay, there we go. So now we have our heart beveled the correct depth, or a good looking depth, and we will add some materials to it. So come back over to our material workspace, come up here to our red material and drag it directly onto our object. We'll then come to our darker red and drag it onto the second dock, just like the words. Drag the second dock onto the outside, and there you go. Cool. That's it for texturing and modeling. Really, that's all the modeling we're going to do. So now that we have that, let's duplicate this track a ton of times. I can hold down the Command key or Control key on the Windows computer and press the D key to duplicate. And if I hold it down, it will just duplicate in a stream. Great, I'm going to duplicate it around 40 times. Then I'll come back over to my animation workspace, double click the timeline to create a new pose, then select our last pose and distribute them into a horizontal line. We can then increase the number of lines to 2 and decrease the line spacing by a lot and increase the size. Perfect. Look at that. Now we'll move it down, and we will select the first pose and move that down a little bit as well. We don't need it as up high as it was. Cool. So now that we have our motion going, it goes from point A to point B. However, I don't like the way it goes from point A to point B. We don't like that. So we want to change the way it goes from point A to point B. That's pretty much all it comes down to. So right now also, notice you can see these motion paths. These hearts follow along the motion path. If you do not see these lines, it's just because your checkbox up here, this motion path button, is turned off. So just turn it back on and you will see the lines. Great. So let's increase the arch. We'll then we'll change the cascade order to random, change the cascade amount to 1, increase the beginning ease, decrease the ending ease, and there you go. Now they've fountain out and come into place. Perfect. We'll come over to our actions, give it a little rotation, free offset with tumble, give it a little maximum distance of offset, and change the rotation to 360. Alright, now when it shoots out of that one area, it looks more like a fountain, and then it floats into place like little paper hearts. So, awesome. Cool. Now that we have that, let's duplicate that layer and move the end pose up so that it creates lines of hearts. So we'll select our track, come to duplicate track, select our last pose, and move it up in the Y direction. Do the same thing a couple more times. 2 more times. Last time, almost there. Okay, now we have our line, our grid of hearts, and when we play it back, we see they all start in one area and they fountain outwards and into place. Awesome. Looks pretty sweet. It's a good look. Okay, now that we have that, let's turn our text back on, and we can see that our objects move together. However, our text is sitting on top of our hearts right now. We don't want that, so let's move that forward. Now when we hit play, look, it gives it a little more depth. Okay, now we have all of the animation and modeling done in our entire scene. The last 2 things we need to do is create a light, so just to give it a better look, and to add a camera. We can do that pretty quickly though, so let me show you. So we'll stop this for now. We'll come up here and create a light. Drag it over here. Select it so it changes the pose, or it changes the timeline marker. Cool, so now that this light is selected, let's change our lights to spotlights. Increase the number of lights to 2. Decrease the size, and we're just positioning these in place. That's all that's happening right here. So I'm gonna decrease this this angle a little bit, move it up really far back. Okay, I'll increase the spot angle and increase the feather angle by a lot, a feather amount, and then decrease the brightness a little bit. And there we go. We have a nice, better looking scene now, just because of a little light. Why not, right? We can go into our lighting workspace. People using version 7 or above. We can select our first light, hold the shift key down to select the second light, and come over to our object controls. You see the shadow casting box, turn that on, and now when we hit render test, we see that our lights are now casting a shadow from our words onto our hearts. And that gives it a much better look. It just looks so much cooler now that that's there. Okay, the last thing we need to do, come back into our animation workspace and create a camera. Great. Double click in the timeline to create the first pose of the camera, and then let's zoom way in. Center the heart, and now when I hit play, before before we do that, let's select the transition and decrease the ease at the end. Actually, let's increase the ease at the beginning and decrease the ease at the end. Now we can click play. We see the camera moves out, the hearts fountain outwards, and the words tumble into place. Alright, that's it for this. I'll see you guys next time.